Good evening. I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Barron,
Here.
Mr. Bradley,
Here.
Ms. Cavill, Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mr. McGowan,
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Here.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Here. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. That takes us to the next item, and that is the recommended action is closed session. That the board enter closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property. Appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, matter pertaining to an individual student, and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Good evening. The recommended action is that the Board of Education return to open session. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Before we begin the board agenda, I would like to ask for a moment of silence, and I'd like to take this moment to acknowledge the profoundly tragic death of a Fremd High School junior that occurred in late October. Akshat Handa was an involved junior at Fremd who was on the swim and water polo teams and known by many. I ask you to join me in a moment of silence to honor his life cut short. Thank you. Our thoughts and sympathies are with his family, friends, teachers, and all who knew him within the Fremd Viking community. Thank you. We'll continue. We have our recognitions, and we have a Veterans Day recognition. Dr. Small?
Saturday, November 11th is Veterans Day. This day is reserved for thanking those who fought for us and put their lives on the line for the sake of our country. Across our schools, we host a variety of events, including breakfast tributes, assemblies, panel discussions, guest speakers, thank you cards, and displays. Tonight, you saw on the screen before we started this meeting some of our District 211 employees who are veterans in our district. Tonight, we honor the bravery of all individuals who served our country. I would like to personally recognize one veteran who I know is here tonight and a part of District 211, and that is Mr. Patrick DeGeorge, our Public Relations Specialist. Patrick, would you please stand, please? A member of the National Guard, Mr. DeGeorge enlisted as a Stinger missile gunner and has held multiple leadership positions throughout his career, including Media Relations Officer in charge for the Joint Task Force Guantanamo Public Affairs. He was deployed in Iraq in 2004, 2008, and 2015. He's been awarded numerous service and combat medals. I would ask that Patrick DeGeorge remain standing, and any veterans who are in our audience tonight, please stand and be recognized. On behalf of 211, we thank all of you for your generous and unselfish service to our country.
Thank you. Before we move on to our state award winners, I know that each of our high schools do some type of a celebration and recognition for our veterans. And I had the privilege of being over at Fremd High School today. And they just had the most wonderful, respectful recognition of the veterans. And it was very nice. There was also a young man who's one of the journalists for the newsletter there, the newspaper. And he really enjoyed being able to take photographs and to talk to people. So I thought that was just a really good mix of interaction between our young people and some of our older individuals who have been serving who had served many years ago, and some of our people who are serving currently. So it was absolutely wonderful and respectful recognition. And I know we have that at all of our schools. So thank you. The next is our state award winners. Dr. Small?
Will Director of Athletic and Activities, Eric Winkowski, please come forward and help us welcome, congratulate, and introduce some very successful students we have here tonight.
Yes, Board of Education and Dr. Small, thank you for taking some time tonight to recognize some talented vocalists and a record-setting athlete. As your sponsor or coach introduces you, students, please walk forward, receive your award, and stand next to the podium. Additionally, I'm going to ask that any family members that are here present tonight, please stand and be recognized when your student is introduced by the sponsor or coach. Helping present students tonight is Conan Principal Julie Novak and Athletic Director Eric Hauser and FREM Principal Mark Langer and Assistant Principal Amanda Hughes. So we'll get started with Scott Sieplick. Scott Sieplick is the head golf coach at Conant High School. He's been there for the last 9 years. He's also a special education teacher at Forest View in District 211. And Scott also has experience coaching baseball, softball, and lacrosse. Scott?
Thank you so much, and good evening. My name is Scott Sieplick. Steal some stuff from me. I've been the head boys golf coach at Conant High School for the past 9 seasons. The last 4 seasons, I've had the privilege of watching Nicholas grow from a talented young golfer to a generational talent and program-changing type of player. Your leadership skills, obvious talent, and confidence were great examples for your teammates. Without the dedication and support from your family, I don't think you'd be standing up here, so I'd like to acknowledge Nicholas's parents, Pat and Lori Simon, if you guys would stand up. Over Nicholas's 4 years, he's accumulated a large list of accolades, which I'm going to share. Nicholas has set every individual golf record at Conant and is part of every team record. Nicholas has won 8 individual titles, including the conference championship, multiple regional titles, the 2023 sectional title, and the 2023 state championship. Nicholas was also named the MSL Conference Player of the Year this season. He led his team to 6 team titles, including 2 regional championships, a second-place finish at sectionals this year, which allowed Conant to make it to state for the first time since 1978. And with the perfect finish, breaking his own Conant record and tying the Illinois state record, shooting a 67 5 under par round in his final round to win the state championship. Nicholas. Nicholas, it was a true pleasure coaching you these past 4 years. I'm truly proud of you. I wish nothing but great success next fall playing for the University of Michigan. And 2 years ago, I had the honor of standing in this room, speaking to most of you, and introducing Nicholas as Conant's first ever All-State golfer. This year, I get to introduce Nicholas as Conant's first ever boys golf state champion. The 2023 3A state champion, Nicholas Simon. Congratulations.
All right, next we'll move on to FREM Choir. Christina Collins started teaching at William Fremd High School in 2014. She attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and graduated with a bachelor's degree in music education and a master's degree from DePaul. At FREM, Christina directs 4 curricular choirs, an a cappella group, and is the vocal director for the musical. She's a very busy person. Christina.
Good evening, Dr. Small, President Klimsquist, and school board members. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize our outstanding treble singers that will be performing at the Illinois Music Education Association's All-State Conference in January. Our choir was one of only 5 high school choirs selected from around the state and the only treble choir to have a featured concert at the 3-day conference. They will perform for an audience of music educators from all grade levels, college students, and families that will travel to see us in Peoria. We were selected by a committee of music educators from submitted recordings, letters of recommendation from other choir directors, and past concert programs. For this performance, the choir will sing challenging and diverse repertoire, including 3 world languages, to showcase their versatility and maturity as an advanced treble ensemble. These students have truly risen to the challenge of preparing a lot of music this semester, including performances for the Homecoming Assembly, our Veterans Day Assembly today, and their upcoming performance in Disney World over Thanksgiving break in a couple weeks. We are also looking forward to working with multiple clinicians over the next 2 months in order to receive feedback and continually improve. I am so excited to watch them grow in confidence as musicians, performers, and people. We will have a preview performance at Fremd on Monday, January 22nd, for anyone local that would like to support these students and see the concert that they will perform in Peoria, which will be on Friday, January 25th. This is my 10th year at Fremd, and I know that I will forever remember this event and hope that the students will also cherish this opportunity. Thank you to these wonderful students for their hard work. They are amazing people, and I am so lucky to know them over multiple years in high school choir. I'm happy that they have been able to continue singing along with all of their busy academic and extracurricular schedules. And the seniors started high school on Zoom choir, so the fact that they continued singing after that and now are performing at the state level is really remarkable. So thank you for continuing. I am so honored to be your teacher, and it is my privilege to share this experience with all of you. Please help me congratulate these students on this outstanding accomplishment. Now I'd like to recognize all the students individually and parents and family members that are here. Please stand to be recognized along with your students. Adia Adanki Timirola. Tess Berent. Anya Bhatia. Anissa Burgos. Madison Deleska. Reagan Dean. Stephanie Decker. Natalia Delgado. Malvika Dawadkar. Nina Hannon. Treasure India Moe. Amelia Kaminska. Paige Kelly. Savannah Court. Sarah Larson. Piper Luther. Stia Purhead. Nayana Ramanujam. Madeline Ranieri. Vinny Rivela. Rashi Ravi. Amira Salama. Elise Schlesinger. Sophia Simonian. Pradanya Sudhakar. Lily Sim. Gabby Vasquez. Thank you again to all of our students here, and we are looking for a great performance in January. Thanks for your time.
We do want to take some pictures. So we've got our young man for the golf and our young ladies. So we'll take our young man. And again, I would really like to thank all of our students, everything that you do for your academics, for your activities that you participate in. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you for supporting your school and for supporting your peers. And thank you to the parents for all that you do, because they need your support. The school needs it also. So thank you for sharing your children with us. And they're just absolutely amazing. And I do have to tell our young singers here, and I would imagine most of them were performing today, if not all of them, you were amazing. The veterans that were there were so impressed with the songs, the selection, and just the way you sounded. It was wonderful. They truly, truly appreciated you. So thank you so much for being there, and for all of our musicians also. That was terrific. So if I may, we're going to have photos taken, and then we will break, and then we'll start our meeting again. Meeting. If anyone would like to stay, you're more than welcome to. Okay, I got Tim.
Okay.
Oh, and there's Pete. Okay.
When it's time for me to go, I'll go. If not, I got it. So you got to think of a handshake we could do
Okay.
before we start our meetings for good luck.
All right,
Yeah, we need to figure
we
out-
will be reconvening our meeting. And before we start
so
on the
quick.
public comments, I would like to read our mission statement because I feel it's really important to us. Township High School District 211 serves the needs of our diverse community by providing relevant and rigorous learning experiences, opportunities for involvement, and strong support systems that empower all students to reach their full potential. And we had a number of outstanding students here. All right, that takes us to public comment. The board welcomes you and is pleased to listen to your comments this evening. It's important that you know this is a public board meeting and not a dialogue, so the board members will not be responding to your comments or answering questions at this time. As a reminder, the board meeting is being taped and live streamed. We ask that you value the procedures and decorum of our meeting and be respectful of those at the podium so they may be heard. When I call your name, please come forward to the podium, state your name for the record. Though not required, you may state if you are a resident of the district. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. You will receive a notification when you have 1 minute remaining. Any individual's unused time or place in order may not be deferred to another individual. If you wish a response from the superintendent, please leave your name and phone number with Mr. Teneper. We have one individual signed up to speak, and that is Mr. Rick Bauer.
Thank you, Mrs. Klimkowitz. And I guess I want to start by saying it's 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and it's an opportunity for me to show my gratitude for each of you, to each of you. Thank you for the work that you do. It's hard work, and I can only imagine what it's like on a day-to-day basis for the decisions that you make. So thank you. I also want to give a special thank you to Dr. Small and her team, and it's the reason why I'm here tonight. At the October Board of Education meeting, Dr. Small's team presented a tax levy proposal. And in that tax levy proposal, there was an item that was proposed for funding moving forward that is something that is significant to everyone I know, and that is funding for select ESSER staff moving forward after this school year. And as a school counselor, this is my 19th year, I should mention, this is my 19th year at Conant High School. Some of you I've known for almost that length of time. Our ESSER staff have made a tremendous difference, and you know this. When I spoke at the April meeting, I was able to share some statistics that our respective student services departments across the district have compiled in terms of student meetings, in terms of home visits, in terms of working with EL students, in terms of connecting students with legal resources, on and on. You know these things, and I know that you appreciate them. And I know that you have a tough decision to make with regards to the tax levy. And these are hard times that we're living in with inflation, with financial resources being difficult for many families, and acknowledging that a tax levy would be an additional expense to our taxpayers in our district. But with that being said, and knowing as a school counselor, I can't reveal any of the countless numbers of meetings that our ESSER counselors have had with students over the past 2 years, because the majority of those students are still students and their confidentiality has to be maintained. So I can't share with you in a public forum all of the different and impactful and amazing ways that our ESSER staff not only have impacted the lives of our students in crisis situations, but they also have helped the permanent staff as well, the non-ESSER staff. It is a shared responsibility that we have, this capacity to be able to serve and in some cases protect as counselors, social workers, psychologists, and nurses, we have that responsibility to protect the safety and health of our students. And our ESSER staff, they provide us with the capacity not just to do more, but to do better. And we've seen it, we felt it. It's a very emotional topic to everyone because of the work that they have done and because of the difference that they have made. And I guess I'm just here to ask for your deep and thoughtful consideration in that part of the tax levy proposal. And I'll end again in just expressing my gratitude to you, Dr. Small, and to your team for having proposed such an important funding for that group of staff. And I'll leave with just this one final comment that I left when I made comments in April. Let's find a way together to make our ESSER staff permanent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that will take us to our EdRed legislative update. Dr. Small?
EdRed, which is the Educational Research and Development, was established in 1971 and represents school districts across Illinois, which includes all or part of 19 of our Senate districts in the state and 30 of our House districts in the state. EdRed Executive Director Bridget Peach is here with us tonight at the board's invitation to give us a brief legislative update. Bridget.
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I will keep this brief because there isn't a lot to share. This week ended the 2-week veto session that the General Assembly convenes each fall. So I was telling Stephen, not a lot happened for public education, specifically in the suburban area. So we are happy about that. Also kind of sad about that because there was some opportunities for some good legislation. I'll start with the veto session update, and then I'll move on to a couple of our organization's initiatives for the year ahead. So this week, they gavelled out a couple of hours ago. We saw no movement on the Invest in Kids program. But it's called a voucher program, but it's a scholarship program that utilizes an income tax tax credit, and we were advocates for the sunset of that program, citing the need for public funds to go to public schools. So that did not get extended, although there was rumors that it would. So that will now expire as scheduled on January 1st, 2024. The second item we were monitoring really closely is something that I'm sure, at least if you read all of the emails I send you, you'd be familiar with. It's the Kosher Halal School Meals Bill. So this has been going on for over a year and a half now. There's a couple of legislators who would like to see schools provide kosher and halal meals to all students that would request them. Obviously, we see this as a very large mandate and something that would be very hard to implement for each student's needs. So the bill itself, when it passed in the spring, did provide the responsibility for the State Board of Ed. The idea was they can enter into one master contract that provides these meals, and then the school districts would work with the state agency to deliver those meals in their cafeterias. The governor vetoed the bill, citing that it was a local issue, that this is really something outside of the scope of ISB. After further discussions, we were able to negotiate it down to the state contract, but also making sure any meal that was included in a contract, kosher, halal, would have to equal the federal reimbursement rate for a regular lunch. We were comfortable with that based on just the price of these meals and ensuring that that price would not be higher than what is already expected of districts. But it passed the Senate and it was held in the House. So it is not moving to our knowledge until January, probably, once they reconvene. So that was another piece that we were watching. They won't come back until January 16th. At least that's what's scheduled. They can always pop something on the calendar, but they won't be back until January 16th, barring any changes. So that kind of sums up veto session. In terms of education issues, they focused on the Chicago Public Schools elected school board issue. That was their main education priority this past couple of weeks. Moving on to our EdRed initiatives, I wanted to bring up two specific ones. We are working to get additional funding for districts who are serving the new arrivals, the new migrant populations that are arriving. We're seeing three distinct groups of new arrivals: southern border, Ukraine, Russia, as well as the Middle East. And so we're working to get additional funding since suburban school districts have not received any since the buses first arrived from Texas over a year ago. We're also looking at non-funding initiatives, how we can provide more flexibility to school districts who are serving the students, whether it's through employment, qualifications, or space. So those are a few things we're doing in the new arrival space. And then finally, we're working on an initiative that will require the approval of a school board before any school facilities are used for polling. This is something that is very important as a school safety issue as well as a continuity of learning issue. We are working on that, like I said, probably in January when we get back down to Springfield. We'll be working to get that through. Right now, the election code and school code both requires the election commissioners to look at schools first as a polling option, which is something we really want to change and have these election commissioners look at other options before looking at schools based on the current climate with school safety. So that's all I prepared. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. I'm also happy to stick around.
Any questions? If not, then thank you very much for taking the
course.
time this evening and coming to speak with us.
Happy to be here anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bridget.
All right, with that, we will move on to our presentation and on the multi-tiered systems of support. Dr. Small?
The District 211 strategic plan focuses on all aspects of our district, including wellness. Tonight, Mr. Josh Schumacher, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Danielle Hauser, Director of Student Services, and Matt Hildebrand, Director of Administrative Services, will present the district's progress toward the wellness goal of 5.5 of the District 211 strategic plan surrounding systems of support in just a second or two.
District 211 is committed to effectively and strategically preparing students for their future. We strive to ensure that our students have post-secondary options by building the following. All right, hold on. Now we're having technical issues again on the second computer, so let's see if we can get this to work.
Can you see it on your computer?
Not yet. It's coming. Okay, we're going to try this again. We'll start from the top if that's okay. District 211 is committed to effectively and strategically preparing students for their future. We strive to ensure that our students have post-secondary options by building the following skills in each of our future graduates: a focus on academic growth, student involvement in the school community, global competitive skills, and physical and mental wellness. These skills form the foundation of our District 211 strategic plan, which outlines the priorities, goals, strategies, and targets to drive innovative progress over a 5-year period. As you know, the plan was developed by a steering committee comprised of staff, parents, students, community members, and you, the Board of Education. The plan covers 10 key priorities and is organized into goals, indicators, strategies, and targets for each priority. I'm honored to be here tonight with Dr. Danielle Hauser, Director of Student Services, and Matt Hildebrandt, Director of Administrative Services. We will present information focused on our progress in Strategic Plan Priority 5, Wellness. This key priority includes the goal statement: all District 211 students will demonstrate growth in physical, emotional, and social wellness. Specifically, in this presentation, we will share information regarding our work in progress towards meeting the targets for Strategy 5.5, annually improve awareness of the continuum of support systems that includes school and community-based resources. The strategy for Indicator 5.5 is designed to first formalize our Tier 1 and 2 continuums for academic, attendance, and behavioral systems of support. Once finalized, we provide updated information to students, parents, and community members about the availability of supports, and then develop school-wide systems to ensure that all freshman parents understand those supports when their freshman begins with us. In order to accomplish this effectively, we have organized our efforts through a framework called Multi-Tiered Systems of Support.
Thank you, Josh. Multi-tiered systems of supports, or MTSS, is a proactive and a preventative framework within 211 schools that integrates data, intervention, instruction, and support to maximize student achievement and support students' socio-emotional, academic, and behavioral needs from a strength-based perspective. MTSS offers a framework for our staff to engage in data-based decision-making related to high-quality instruction and intervention, social and emotional learning, and positive behavioral supports necessary to ensure positive outcomes for all of our students. The District 211 MTSS framework consists of 4 essential process-related components: screening, progress monitoring, multi-level prevention systems, and data-based decision-making. Some of the key aspects of the 211 MTS system include tiered levels of support that involve universal, targeted, and intensive levels of support, and these tiered levels are data-driven, utilizing progress monitoring, collaboration, culturally responsive practices, and family and community involvement. MTSS data and processes may also support identification of students with learning or other disabilities. The goal of a multi-tiered system of support is to ensure that all students receive the essential and appropriate level of support that they all need to succeed, and that interventions are matched with their specific and individualized needs. By using data, this tiered approach, and a team-based methodology, our educators, administrators, and support staff help students to overcome challenges and achieve their academic and behavioral goals.
District 211's application of the multi-tiered systems of support is designed to bring together 5 key principles: a shared foundation, equity, collaboration, alignment, and communication to proactively support all District 211 students. District 211's shared foundation sets a defined experience for all students. This common educational vision outlines values, beliefs, and educational goals that guide the practices and opportunities available to all students, creating a cohesive and inclusive learning environment. Equity is a fundamental component of the MTSS framework in District 211. The district is committed to creating thresholds and pathways that enhance access to educational opportunities while reducing bias. This ensures that all students, regardless of their background, abilities, or circumstances, have equal access to the support and resources they need. A collaborative approach encourages teamwork, shared information, and a resource sharing to provide the most effective support to students. Aligning roles and expectations streamlines efforts and reduces ambiguity, ultimately leading to a more effective system for supporting students. A shared language and open communications ensure that all stakeholders are aware of the strategies, interventions, and progress of students, fostering a sense of partnership. By combining these key principles, it creates a comprehensive and proactive system that supports the diverse needs of our students while promoting an inclusive and equitable educational environment.
The MTSS framework that we have developed includes a focus on 3 main areas: academics, social-emotional wellness, and behavior, which includes attendance. For each main area, our efforts are focused into what we call Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 efforts. Both the supports and interventions in these tiers increase in intensity and individualization as we move across the framework. Tier 1 represents the experience and opportunity that we provide to every District 211 student. In the realm of academics, this includes a rigorous, relevant curriculum founded in District 211 critical learning standards that is delivered through high-quality, research-based instructional methods that are culturally responsive and equitable. For social-emotional, this includes safe and supportive learning spaces that teach and model social-emotional learning strategies, coupled with access to trained counselors and social workers. For behavior and attendance, this includes explicit communication and reminders about the school-wide and classroom expectations. Tier 1 serves as the foundation for a student's educational experience in District 211. If a student demonstrates that they need additional support beyond this, Tier 2 represents the possible targeted group interventions that are available to support students. Tier 2 includes supports, which are typically short-term, and interventions that occur over a longer period of time. These interventions provide additional instruction in skills, strategies, and/or content, depending on the area of focus. Finally, for students who continue to demonstrate need, Tier 3 represents intensive, individualized supports that are paired with a community resource recommendation. Using the MTSS framework you just saw, we organize the practical approach through a continuum model. Projected on the screen is a general representation of how this works. As you can see, Tier 1 is on the left-hand side and represents what every student who walks in the doors of our school buildings experience. Please notice that this diagram states that Tier 1 includes supports. These are things that are consistently practiced by our faculty. To give you a behavioral example, if a student is not meeting expectations in a particular classroom, the teacher will provide Tier 1 supports, beginning with a direct conversation with the student regarding the unexpected behavior, and then if the behavior continues, they contact the parent, as well as potentially the trusted adult, the counselor, and then the administrator. For attendance, we have Tier 1 supports in place that provide regular communication and information to their parents when a student has missed 5, 9, and 12 days of school. To continue this example, you can see that there is a dashed line between Tier 1 and 2. This represents what we call a universal threshold, or a level of performance that demonstrates the need for additional support. In the case of attendance, when a student misses 15 days of school, they meet that predetermined threshold and are considered for Tier 2 supports and interventions. There is another predetermined threshold that determines when a student is considered for more intensive Tier 3 supports. While this may seem complicated at the onset, Mr. Hildebrandt and Dr. Hauser will provide specific examples that help understand the practical application of the concept.
To provide the first specific example of how the MTSS framework and continuum work looks within our schools, I'd like to describe to you a framework in place that addresses a specific student behavior of concern that we have been focused on over the past few years, and that is of vaping. When we refer to a student activity surrounding vaping in schools, there are a multitude of layers that connect with the behavior to keep in mind. When students use or engage in vaping, it's important to note that it's not only a behavior, but almost always connected to mental health, stress management, and oftentimes even addiction. Vaping technology started out as a means to deliver highly concentrated levels of nicotine. Nicotine being one of the most addictive substances known to science, and the quantity delivered through vaping presents a particularly difficult set of conditions when we are addressing, remediating, and trying to reduce that type of behavior in adolescence. Support for the individual student is always our primary consideration. In our response when they are found to be in possession or using nicotine-based products, the other important aspect to remember is that vape technologies have become a common means to deliver THC. THC is a primary psychoactive component that's found in marijuana. We've established separate MTSS frameworks to address both of these types of behaviors because the behaviors surrounding those types of use are very unique. For this discussion, I'm going to focus on the vaping and possession of nicotine-based vapes. Our Tier 1 supports related to vaping include school-wide universal supports, education, and expectations that we focus on for all of our students. These universal supports consist of a multitude of mechanisms, including positive school culture initiatives, behavior expectation presentations to targeted groups that include freshmen, student handbooks, informational campaigns, and extensive content within our wellness curriculum. Our Tier 2 supports are targeted interventions that are instituted as a result of that first offense of a student found to be in possession of nicotine or using nicotine-based vapes in school. The response and intervention that all students receive include an initial referral with the student assistant counselor. That counselor is trained to address addictive substance-related behaviors. And the students are also enrolled in a third-party online educational resource called Third Millennium. There's also follow-up by that SAP coordinator or the student's counselor upon completion of that Third Millennium module. I want to elaborate a little bit on what Third Millennium is. It's an education and intervention resource that utilizes evidence-based approaches and learning techniques to engage students both at positive impact decision-making and reduce negative behaviors. Third Millennium provides a number of learning modules and resources for schools that include these targeted modules to address behaviors that negatively impact success and well-being. Recently, a student from Schaumburg shared after completing the Third Millennium Nicotine Intervention module that they appreciated the modules explained how to identify triggers that actually caused them to turn towards vaping. The students shared that they appreciated learning actual statistics of usage of vaping in high schools, and they indicated that they liked the activities and the coping mechanism strategies that were suggested as alternatives to turning to vapes. Tier 3 interventions come as a result of continued vape-related behaviors. These interventions represent more intense, individualized supports and expanded student assistance supports, as well as referrals to outside community-based resources. Parents are essential in all of our efforts to positively impact students and prevent risky behavior. Contact and collaboration with parents to ensure that awareness and provide support is always a part of our school's response. Finally, it's always important to note that if or when there are mitigating or serious factors related to the vaping behaviors, there are likely additional administrative responses that supplement those tiered interventions that all students receive.
Thank you, Matt. Moving to social emotional, the Panorama SEL survey is administered to students during wellness class as a universal screener 3 times a year. The survey focuses on 5 areas: supportive relationships, growth mindset, self-management, sense of belonging, and emotional regulation. The student support teams then analyze the survey data to identify students who may be at risk or need of additional support. We pay attention to students who score below expected benchmarks on the overall Panorama survey results and on any of the specific categories, or exhibit signs of challenges in any of the focus areas. The day the results are available, counselors follow up with identified students to determine which tier intervention would best support the student's social and emotional needs. This proactive approach helps create a more supportive learning environment for our students. A counselor may determine after meeting with the student, a couple of one-on-one meetings with the student would build awareness of available supports within the school to best serve the student. Another popular option is to check in with the students once a week digitally or in person, which will allow the counselor to make timely intervention when the student needs them the most. Finally, some students are best served by attending one of the school's specialized groups. When students move to a Tier 2 intervention, they are progress monitored within Panorama's Student Success Platform. Based on the progress, the student support teams determine if additional support is working or if more intensive individualized support paired with community resources is necessary. If it is determined a student needs a Tier 3 intervention, we assist the family connect with a community resource. Our school student services teams have been re-engaging with community organizations to confirm available supports and connections for District 211 students and families. During the afternoon of the Institute Day, they met with several organizations and continue to schedule opportunities throughout the year for counselors to make informed recommendations to families. An additional Tier 2 intervention that will be introduced second semester at all schools is a peer mediation program. Peer mediators will facilitate mediation for students who struggle with emotional regulation and self-management and find themselves in non-physical conflict situations. School staff identified students to facilitate peer mediations. They will participate in a final training this Monday, November 13th. In addition, the district and school wellness teams evaluated the Panorama survey results to determine large-scale activities and events. For example, this year, all schools recognize a sense of belonging as a key area to focus energy and efforts. The wellness teams are working hard on increasing a sense of belonging within each school.
As I alluded to before, our third example this evening is the attendance continuum. As you know from both our academic goal presentation and our school report card, daily student attendance continues to be a main focus area for our district. Using the MTSS model, we provide clear attendance expectations in the Tier 1 level, demonstrated by our communication with students and families on the first day of school, our recommendation that students miss no more than 7 days of school in a school year, and our attendance marketing campaign, which seeks to regularly remind our community that every day matters. We have implemented a system of Tier 1 supports that includes additional messaging to families that include information about their students' attendance, about the availability of supports at the school, and which school personnel to reach out to for assistance. When students meet a predetermined absent rate, in this case 15 missed days of school, they are considered for Tier 2 supports. Our consideration system, which will be implemented beginning the second semester of this school year, consists of a student voice survey, a conversation between the administrator and parent, and a consultation with the student support team to determine the most appropriate Tier 2 supports or interventions. The most common include an attendance contract, the implementation of a check-in system in the morning, or the determination that attendance is actually not the most pressing concern that needs to be addressed with that particular student. If the Tier 2 supports or interventions are not successful, meaning the student again reaches a second predetermined threshold, they are considered for individualized services and also receive a recommendation for community resources outside of the school. We have found the tiered progression with increasingly intensive supports to be initially positive and successful for us. This system meets students where they are, provides them with the appropriate amount of support, and allows our school staff to organize their efforts towards maximum impact. As you can see, this progression includes Tier 1 supports for all students, Tier 1 and 2 supports for students who demonstrate they may be temporarily struggling, and then Tier 2 and 3 interventions for students who meet predetermined thresholds.
District 211 has established an MTSS framework that includes compromise and commitment. All stakeholders are committed to the implementation of the MTSS framework. The commitment helps us implement systems with fidelity. We continue to align our school-based practices and create additional practices to support students. An area we are working towards is informing all stakeholders, which includes parents, guardians, of the supports available within District 211 and community resources. Communication efforts will continue to increase and be available through multiple formats. As the needs of students continue to evolve and change, so must we as we implement the MTSS framework.
Tonight's presentation provided information relative to the progress towards meeting the yearly targets for our Strategic Plan Strategy 5.5, annually improve the awareness of the continuum of support systems that include school and community-based resources. Last year's targets, which allowed us to formalize our Tier 1 and 2 continuums, also include the identification of areas of growth regarding communication methods. This year's targets include providing updated communications and information to parents, which we are accomplishing through the additional communications described about student attendance and upcoming communications regarding academic performance. Our next steps are to engage the District 211 Wellness Committee in providing feedback about these communications. And as we work towards next year's targets, we will focus on the freshman transition experience, as well as engaging parents and students to provide feedback about the communications and supports. Before we end this evening, I'd like to thank Mr. Hildebrandt for his efforts towards developing the continuums and the communications, Dr. Hauser for her and her team's efforts, and Mr. Gorson's technology team, who's been invaluable in helping us automate some of these processes within our systems. So thank you all very much, and thank you for your engagement.
Questions? Ms. Barron?
No questions as of right now. Thank you so much for putting this presentation together and providing some more information as what supports.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Thank you so much for putting this presentation together and providing more information about what support systems we have in place for our students at all levels of the tier. So thank you.
Mr. Bradley, any questions?
Thank you guys very much for the presentation. I do have one question. I guess it would be under vaping. We talked about the various tiers where we can help the student. And when it comes to vaping, as you know, it could be psychological and just a behavioral disorder. So when we do identify a student that falls in that category and we're trying to offer support to that student, are we doing that while the student is still in school, or is the student away from the school? because knowing all those factors, I think we can kind of disrupt their every day of living if we remove them during this process.
As with many undesirable behaviors, they're oftentimes exacerbated by being disconnected from schools, right? And particularly vaping type behaviors. When we remove them from the connections that they have within our schools and the supports, that is counterproductive. And that is why the interventions and the systems that you see here, that we ensure any student that is identified as being engaging in that kind of behavior, these are the supports they get and it's connected to school. There are, of course, as I stated in the presentation, sometimes mitigating factors that might warrant a different response, but it is always, and with fidelity, applied with those supports in mind, connected to the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenblum?
Thank you very much for putting the presentation together. As we know, people learn and understand things in different ways. One is in a written format, and we received that with the agenda, and the other is in a visual fashion, which you presented to us here today. I thank you very much for putting it together, and I also appreciate the apparent organizational aspect of these support systems and how there's a lot of thought into how it goes, opposed to just running people around and trying to figure things out along the way. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cavill, questions?
Of course, I do. I have some questions. I have 4. So the first one is when we're looking at tier 3, they largely look the same, right? Those referral to community resources, I'm familiar with, for example, Kenneth Young, which I know provides some of those community resources, et cetera. But I'm sure that they're not doing all of our community resource referrals. So I'm hoping for some more specific examples of what those referrals might look like.
Sure. We have what I would call a more exhaustive list of all the different locations within all of the 5 school communities. And so we're happy to put that list together for you and provide it to you.
I would love to see that.
Sure.
And then my follow-up question to that is if there can be included information, or if you want to share now, I don't want to put you on the spot. But I'm interested in how accessible those referral resources are to students coming from families with all income levels.
Sure. So we are, as Dr. Hauser said, our departments and our staff are going out to connect with those resources to ensure that, one, they have space, right? Because we know community resources specifically are very busy, and so that they have space, and what's the best process for us to actually recommend a student or a family to them that they could get access to that. And so we're beginning to work on that, but we do consider income levels for all of our families as we make those recommendations as well.
Wonderful.
Dr. Hauser and I have had multiple conversations with the Schaumburg Mental Health Board representatives to make sure that as they give out grants and different things to service providers that may be able to be helpful to our families, that we stay connected to know what's happening in that aspect of it.
Great. My second question, well, you answered the first 2, which is great. So number 3, so I'm looking at slide 8 when I do this, which is the social and emotional tiered supports. So this is great. But my question is, these were all, if I understood in your presentation correctly, related specifically to the outcomes of a student-taken panorama survey. As we know, not all students, that's not a mandatory thing. Some students choose not, or their families choose not to participate in such a survey. And then, throughout the course of the day, being in a school myself, you can see any number of interesting behaviors come up that could be also read as a sign of need. So my question really is, I appreciate the information about the results of the panorama survey and how those feed into these tiered supports. What happens for the kids who might have need, who don't participate in the survey, or who otherwise voice that requested need, maybe in alternative means, like behaviors, et cetera?
So the survey, what we're showing here is just one example of how a student could access and move through a continuum. So you don't need to take the panorama survey to access the supports. There are certainly different continuums for that. We have students that come down to the office all the time, and they need to move into a supportive tier because of something that has happened that day or the night before. So this is just simply one example using that survey as a ramp to get in, but there are many other ramps to get in.
That's very reassuring. I appreciate that. And then my fourth question is a specificity about the attendance thresholds. So, you know, the dashed line between tiered supports. I don't know what the second one is, that wasn't delineated, but the first one was mentioned 15 days, right, of missed school. My question is, like, are all of those 15 days of blending of excused or unexcused absences, are they all 15 unexcused absences? What happens if parent is calling in? You know, does that count toward that threshold or not?
It does. All absences count towards it. And then that's what, when we talked about the student support team, at the 15-day mark, they determine what's the next step for that student. So obviously, if somebody was gone for 15 days and it was excused by their parent, there may not need to necessarily be an intervention, but it's an additional conversation that we can have with the parent that says, your students missed a lot of school. That's 3 weeks of school. And so are there things that we could do or that you need from us? And so they would not necessarily be put in an intervention if that was the case.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of information here. My question is, how does the district evaluate the successfulness of the Tier 3 interventions? Do you have a metric? I know obviously you want to see Tier 3 bringing students back, behaviors change, or decision-making going in a positive direction. How is that evaluation performed?
So it's more difficult at the tier 3 level, obviously, because it's an individualized plan, a one-on-one type of plan or intervention or support that's developed between the counselor and the student and the parent, or the administrator and the student and the parent. So as we work there are some that we know have been successful for us in the past. And so a lot of times those are ones we lean on, depending on the behavior. But also when we bring in the community resource, that's something that we'd like to see, you know, what's happening outside of the school and what access do parents have and students have to our resources. And then beyond the access, what are they actually using, right, to see. And so it's really a continual measurement, and it's an individualized measurement. So sometimes it's qualitative as opposed to quantitative on what's working and what's not.
So I understand Tier 1 to Tier 2 has a definitive line.
Yes.
Tier 2 to Tier 3 has a definitive line.
Yes.
But so I'm asking how the district determines if a Tier 1 intervention isn't working and needs to be revised. Or is there no process for that?
So Tier 1 doesn't have any interventions. It's
Right.
the
No, that
experience,
I
it's
understand.
the support. So
It's
those
clear.
stand in place. The Tier 2, we have, since they're a group intervention and it's time bound, we do progress monitoring. And so we can show, for example, if we were to give every student who met 15 days an attendance contract, we would be able to have data on how successful they are.
Right.
There's some research to say they're going to be about 30% successful. If we have the check-in system, right, which we're going to begin to implement as one of the options, there's research to say the percent success of that if it's happened with fidelity.
Right.
So
This is all
our-
Tier 2, right? And my
Right.
concern's with Tier 3. How does
Tier-
the district know if you're sending students into a Tier 3 system that isn't working or producing the results that you need?
So the main reason we know is if the student eventually comes out of the Tier 3 and they no longer need that individualized resource, that they can move back. The goal is they can move back into potentially Tier 1 all the way, or they can move back into a Tier 2. Because part of it is we're providing additional instruction at each of these levels, right? So it's not just they're in this thing, they're in this intervention that is providing them more content, more skill development, more strategies for doing this. And so the concept is always we move everyone back to Tier 1. Now, there are times when it's complex, right? And it's not just an attendance problem. It's not just a vaping problem. It's not just a social emotional problem. It's all three and more than that. And so those are complex situations that are going to require continuous support for students.
Thank you.
Mr. McGowan?
I didn't have any questions, but thank you for the presentation, though.
I do have a question. Going back to the absentee days, can you talk a little bit about mental health days? How does that fit in? And how do we address maybe some of the needs of students who take mental health days?
So mental health days do factor into those number of dates, but after.
Let's just remind everybody
Oh,
what the
what
reference of the
mental
mental
health
health days are.
So a mental health day is a day that students, for whatever personal reason, decide that they need to take a day off of school to center themselves, to take care of themselves, however they see fit. So a student will call in. It is excused absence as a mental health day. It is something that, for example, it does not count against them for Harper Promise. That's always one of the biggest questions, right? Because we want students to take care of their social emotional needs. During that time, though, if a student were to have 2 days where they are called out for mental health day, at that point, our counselors, our psychs, or our social workers will check in with the student just to make sure everything is okay, to see if there's any additional supports that we can do, that we can implement. And the response from the students and the families varies. Sometimes students are just fine. They just needed that day off to do whatever they need to do, and they're fine to go back. Sometimes having that dialogue and students becoming aware and families becoming aware of the services we offer, there will be continual check-ins with the student just to see if they need any additional support.
Because it's a legislative requirement, we can't, it's not within our control. We have to accept that up to 5 days per school year per the legislation. So as Dr. Hauser said, we put systems in place to make sure that we're reaching out to families after that second one and just saying, hey, you've taken 2 now. Is there something we can do to help? Is there something we should know?
In addition to the attendance letter, we started a letter last year with families and students too, so they were aware of where they were at in their 5 days.
Thank you, because I think that's really important. I didn't want to see somebody falling through. Right, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, Ms. Barron.
Going to what Ms. Cabell was talking about, accessibility to these services once they're in tier 3 and we refer them out. Some of the things that I've heard out in the community is transportation. That's a huge barrier for a lot of families. Does the district help support families in getting students to those services, helping with the transportation piece?
Again, it's a hard question to answer because it's more individualized as opposed as pertaining to what is the support, what's the recommendation? Is it a recommendation where the resource could see them immediately, or is it something where the family needs to make an appointment? There are times where a family wants to think about the recommendation and whether or not they want to move forward with it as well. And so it just depends exactly on that situation and the timing and what the family is going to choose to do with the recommendation.
So if a family does get into the service, does want the service, but transportation is a barrier, what does the district do? Does the district then support them in getting them there, or that's on the family to figure out on their own?
I could speak towards that. So there's going to be some circumstances where students and through existing identification may be eligible for some of those supports. All of our schools have mechanisms and funds that are oftentimes discretionary that can be used for those individual situations to help families, and certainly are leveraged. Certainly if they qualify for under McKinney-Vento, there are some ways in which we do find ways in which to support families through those. But every building has kind of those discretionary options to do so as they arise, but on an individualized basis.
And we quickly talked about SAP coordinators. So for example, when a student is caught vaping, they're sent to their SAP coordinators, or the SAP coordinators equipped and supported in order to support those students that are in tier 2 before referring them out to a tier 3. So I just want to know, do they feel supported? Are there additional supports that we need? Because addiction, might be something that might be out of a counselor, social worker's realm.
True, we're not solving every problem. We're trying, and that's part of the system, and that's part of the tier 3 part, where when we say referral to community resources, it's also to say we can't solve this alone, right? And so there needs to be additional resources that are accessible to the student and the family that combine with what we're providing in the school. So that's a recognition of that piece of it.
And I think that's an important acknowledgement of tier 3. And it's a common conversation that is had at Ed Red and across the area, probably the entire state and the nation, is schools are a place where parents feel welcome and can get help, but we cannot do everything. We don't have the funding nor the personnel to do everything. And that's the acknowledgement of Tier 3, is we get to a point where there needs to be another layer that's not us. And as much as we would want to help every child, we know there's a certain point where there's got to be more than what we can do in the schoolhouse.
And I think that that's an interesting question in regards to transportation. And maybe that's something that needs to be brought to the mental health board. We've got it in the townships, and maybe that's something that they can explore to see how they can help families. So I think that that's an excellent point. Any other questions? All right, if not, then I thank you very much for the presentation and all the good information. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and that takes us to the consent agenda. And because not all board members were present at our October 19th regular board meeting, we do have a separate motion for that. I also have a request to remove item C, which is the resolutions authorizing interventions in proceedings before the State Property Tax Appeal Board. Does any board member wish to have any other items removed? Okay. If not, it's going to be three separate motions. The first motion is that the consent agenda with the removal of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 19th, 2023, and the removal of item C, resolutions authorizing intervention in proceedings before the State Property Tax Appeal Board also be removed, and the remaining consent agenda items be approved as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. All right, the second item is that the minutes of the regular meeting of October 19th, 2023 be approved as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Abstain.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. And that takes us to our third action. And the recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the resolutions authorizing intervention in proceedings before the State Property Tax Appeal Board, which seek assessed valuation reductions in excess of $100,000 for property tax year 2022. Docket numbers 2022-39502, 2022-38374, 2022-39598, 2022-37513, 2022-37490, 2022-37481, 2022-23578, 2022-25138, 2022-25142, 2022-25501, 2022-22616, and 2022-25140. And further authorize Franzik as the Board of Education's legal representative to file requests to intervene in appeal proceeding forms with the Property Tax Appeal Board on the properties for which the district receives notification of appeal. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
No.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. And the next item then takes us to Freedom of Information Act request. That's information item. And then the next is the placement testing of incoming freshmen. It's an information item. Dr. Small, anything that you would like to add?
I'd like to thank all the personnel that were involved in our freshman placement testing. Not only our student services departments, our special education departments, our technology departments, many more people, including we had districts 15 and 54 technology departments here in order to ensure that we had a smooth transition, for this was the first time that we gave this placement test as a digital test, and our incoming freshmen brought their District 15 and District 54 devices into our schools to use. Went very, very well. Lots of attention to detail.
Thank you. All right, so then that takes us to the Illinois High School Association Letter of Appreciation. It's an information item.
This is a thanks to each one of our high schools for participating in setting up their courts in order for our state competitors to come to each one of our schools to participate in the state finals.
Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us to unfinished business, and the first item is, the recommended action is that the board policy file, oops, wait a second. I jumped ahead. All right. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution, which sets forth the amount of $264,640,400 as the proposed 2023 levy for Township High School District 211, and directs publication of a notice of public hearing on the proposed levy at its meeting to be held on December 14th, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Dr. Small, start.
Tonight, the board will take action to approve a resolution setting the tentative 2023 levy amount and publish notice in of the public hearing that will be held on December 14th for the Board of Education meeting, as well as the vote on the final amount for the levy. The recommended 2023 levy amount that was presented at the October board meeting will preserve the long-term financial stability of the district while also maintaining our strong position of fiscal efficiency and fulfill the board's strategic plan, including the ability to remain debt-free while maintaining a minimum targeted fund balance. These financial goals will support the capacity to sustain the quality within our comprehensive academic programs and excellent student opportunities for years to come. The recommended increase is 5% plus the estimated new property growth of 0.3%. Last week, the Cook County Treasurer's Office issued a press release on the rising tax bills in Cook County. Within their communication, they cited numerous reasons for the rise, including the recapture levy. The release they put forth specifically named District 211 and said that we collected $4.8 million in recapture levy dollars in addition to our 2022 levy. That is not correct, and the Treasurer's Office has subsequently corrected this document. The board took action in December 2022 to reject the $4.8 million that would have automatically been added to the tax bill. The recommendation for this December meeting is that the board again reject passing the recapture levy cost and passing it on to the taxpayers. It is an unusual financial situation for a district to be debt-free and also be rejecting the additional taxing money available to them through the recapture levy. It is too bad that the Treasurer's Office did not highlight District 211 as one of the only school districts taking action that as relief to the taxpayers through that levy.
Okay. Thank you. Comments, questions? All right. Then roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski,
No.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item is the request for proposal, electricity and natural gas services. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve a live auction for the procurement of natural gas and electricity, and further that the board authorize the superintendent or designee to award contracts for electricity and natural gas services for a period not to exceed 48 months in length, subject to rates received that are no more than 10% above the request for proposals received on November 2nd, 2023, with final determination of product and term to be made following auction results. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Small, anything? Okay. All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. All right, then that will take us to some of our policies. The recommended action is that the board policy section 8, negotiations, be deleted as a board policy section. Further, that the superintendent be directed to remove the policy section from active status on board docs. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. All right, and unless there's objection, what I'd like to do is move item number 6 up on our agenda and vote on that one next. That one is BCE board appointments. All right, the recommended action.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did I? Oh, I'm sorry, item 9J. I apologize. All right, and that the recommended action is that the board policy file BCE board appointments be modified as proposed and added as an active board policy on board docs. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
No.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, that takes us back to the policy on BCBA board officers. The board policy file BCBA board officers be modified as proposed and added as an active board policy on board docs. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. The next recommended action is that board policy file BCCA, district treasurer, be deleted as a board policy. Further, that the superintendent be directed to remove the policy from active status on board docs. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. The next item is that the board policy file, JFCO, behavioral intervention policy, be modified as proposed and added as an active board policy on board docs. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is that the board policy file BDDD quorum be modified as proposed and added as an active board policy on board docs. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item is that the board policy file JHFD, student use of automobiles and parking, be modified as proposed and added as an active board policy on board docs. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. All right, and then that takes us to the next item is the Illinois Association of School Boards Resolutions 2023, and that's up for a brief discussion. Mr. Rosenblum.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody on the board who has provided me with your decision on how I should vote for resolutions. at the upcoming delegate assembly at the Triple I conference representing this Board of Education. So I'd like to briefly go through each resolution. There's only 5, and let you know how, based on the votes that have been presented to me, I will be voting on behalf of this Board of Education. The first is the industrial construction statement of resolution that supports and encourages legislation that prohibits the construction of industrial facilities near schools. And that is that the resolution committee requested a do not adopt, and this board agrees with the resolution committee not to adopt that resolution. Second resolution is school resource officer funding, and that it requests that the Illinois legislature consider legislation providing educational funding to all school districts to offset the cost of a school resource officer. The resolution committee recommended a do adopt for this resolution, and this Board of Education agrees with the resolution committee on a do adopt for this resolution. The third resolution is bus driver regulations, and that is to support changes to the federal and state school transportation regulations that return licensing requirements and driver training liability back to pre-February 2023 levels at minimum, allow local training and testing for bus driver candidates, and increase the transportation reimbursement rate from the state of Illinois to 100%. The resolution committee recommended a do adopt of this resolution, and this Board of Education agreed with the resolution committee to adopt that resolution. The fourth resolution is employment history review, and it requests that the Illinois legislature consider using the Illinois Department of Child and Family Services Child Abuse and Neglect Tracking System as a means to fulfill the employment history review of Faith's law. The resolution committee recommended a do not adopt, and this Board of Education agreed with the resolution committee to recommend not adopting this resolution. And the fifth and final resolution being presented at the delegate assembly next weekend is the alternative safe school funding statement of resolution, and that is recommending that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall advocate for additional funding to be provided for regional alternative safe schools to allow for an elementary appropriate program, additional funding and approved certification programs for board certified behavioral analysts in school districts, and additional flexibility with student discipline to help local districts provide the safest learning environment possible. The resolution committee recommended a do not adopt this resolution, and this Board of Education agreed with the resolution committee's recommendation not to adopt this resolution. Based on the Board of Education for 211's recommendations and requests, I will be voting as this board so chose. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenblum, thank you very much. Thank you for gathering the information, and thank you for your willingness to serve as our delegate representative. Thank you. All right, then that takes us to new business, and we have the 2023 school report card. The recommended action is that the Board of Education direct the superintendent to post access to the school report cards to the district and school websites no later than November 30th, 2023. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Small.
School report cards were developed by the state of Illinois to provide information about academic performance and characteristics of students, faculty, instructional resources, and finances at the school district and the state level. Every public school in the state is issued a summative designation. At the high school level, the summative designations are determined based on the school's composite data on key indicators, as well as data for individual student demographic groups. The specific categories used to determine the summative designations for high school include English proficiency, which is the junior year SAT scores, math proficiency, which is the junior year SAT math scores, science participation in the Illinois Science Assessment, English learners' progress through the access test given at every grade, graduation rate, 9th grade on track to graduation, chronic absenteeism, and the climate survey. When these factors are all put together, a school is issued a summative. There are 4 summative ratings possible: exemplary, commendable, targeted support, and comprehensive support. Only 10% of the high schools in this state can achieve an exemplary rating. This year, for the second year in a row, District 211 has 4 high schools with exemplary ratings: Hoffman Estates, Schaumburg, Fremd, and Conant High Schools. Palatine High School maintains a consistent commendable rating. All of our schools continue to use this data as a source for improvement. The District 211 academic goals that are also reported annually to this board remain in alignment with the school report card and are a part of our continuous improvement intervention and review cycle. Though the school report cards are online and accessible, tonight's action is required by the board to post those direct links to each school's report card via our district website.
Any questions or thoughts?
I do have a thought.
Okay.
And again, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I find it, I don't know what the right word is. I'm very interested to see what happens with these metrics in the future and the way that they're tabulated because of their reliance on SAT scores to some degree in certain areas, when the SAT relevance and importance is rapidly fading in terms of college admissions year after year after year. So it's a curiosity as it stands now when I look at report card metrics, because there is an ever widening, and that gap is moving very, very, very significantly year after year on an annual basis. And of course, when you have a decline in relevance to college applications for an admissions test like that, then that therefore rapidly affects student and family investment in attaining the highest score possible. So SAT scores last year are not necessarily comparable in the same way to SAT scores from even 5 years ago. But again, this isn't moving even at a uniform rate. It's still very important to some families. It's much less important to others. And it's just in a state of significant change. So, you know, I keep that in mind when I look at these report cards, and I find it very curious to think about how these report cards are going to adapt or not adapt to changing conditions.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, then roll call, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Aye.
Mr. McGowan?
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum?
Aye.
Ms. Cabell?
Aye.
Ms. Barron?
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz?
Aye. Motion carries. Next is the recommendation that the curriculum committee report and recommendations be approved as presented. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, Dr. Small?
Each fall, winter, and spring, we conduct departmental curriculum meetings to formalize our curricular initiatives, consider new course proposals, recommend critical learning standard changes and reviews, and approve student assessments, along with recommending textbooks. Assistant Superintendent Josh Shoemaker leads these meetings, which includes all of our principals and the department chairs for each of the 16 departments. The fall round of the curriculum meetings were recently held, and a very detailed report is attached to the agenda for your review.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just had one question that I'd like to ask. With regard to the deletion of the 2 EL courses in the curriculum, it was approved by a majority of vote that E106 and E113 be reduced from 3 periods of instruction to 2 periods of instruction. What was the feedback from those that weren't voting with the majority?
Sure. One member of the committee did vote nay on those deletions and did not agree with the deletion of the courses so that students could access graduation and elective courses.
They didn't elaborate, or there's no... Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
First of all, thank you very much for all of the work that you and your committees and chairs do on this. I know that it's a lot to go through all the different, I mean, we know how many multitude of courses and programs we offer to our students. So thank you very much for that. I just wanted to, as may be expected, to point out and thank you for adding safe gun storage in the driver education coursework going forward. I think it's a very important addition, as are other additions and deletions, but I wanted to point that one out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is that the Board of Education award the business for buses for the Transportation Department to the lowest responsible bidder, Central States Bus Sale, in the amount of $1,376,455. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Cabell,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. That takes us to potential topics for future discussion. Okay, I did not have any presented to me, so thank you. All right, then that'll take us to committee reports, starting with the NSSEO. They are going to be starting the Finance Advisory Committee. It's probably going to be meeting it will be meeting in January of '24. So they'll be starting with that one. The NSSEO has been using a survey. It's HumanX, and they've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now to get a pulse of the climate and the culture within the school system for NSSEO. And the way they define climate is the system structure, the field, the building, the grounds, welcoming components, feel of the school and people, things like cleanliness and decor, organization, and appearance. They look at culture as can be defined as a guiding belief and values evident in the way a school operates. It can be used to encompass all attitudes, expectations, expected behaviors, and values that impact how the school operates. And they provide a survey that I believe had 88 questions. And they look for the responses that come from the staff there. And they break the staff down into some different categories, minor school, Kirk, things of that nature. The top elements that have shown up are pride in the school, that there is engagement and inspiration, there's continuous improvement, the quality, innovation, satisfaction, and communication. Those are the 5 dimensions that they look at, and they say that a score of anything over a 4.0 is a good response from the staff that they have there. What they did take a look at, they broke it down. There was a gentleman that was there from HumanX, and he gave us the very brief presentation in regards to it. And the top predictors for successful engagement and satisfaction within the school district is looking at pride, the talent and the fit, relationships, continuous improvement, and career development. The district was able to score quite well on that. They have a graph that they use in regards to it. And there was a high rate of satisfaction and engagement. On the high end, it was looking at 67.34%. And then some of the scales around it were within 10%, 4% of the satisfaction. A couple of things that they looked at was the top items, the questions that they were asked. I feel great pride in the work I do, and that dimension was pride. That was ranked very high. I feel fully engaged in the work that I do. I'm committed to the success of the organization. In my role, I have the opportunity to do things that I do both well and enjoy. And I feel great pride in the team of which I am part. So these were all very positive items that they brought forth. They also pointed out the items that were on the bottom of this survey. And some of those questions were, in the past 3 months, my supervisor has discussed my success and progress with me. Our organization selects the right people for the right job. I have received meaningful recognition in the past 10 days. I feel in on things that are happening at our organization, and I am provided personal coaching from my supervisor. They ranked these 5 items here, still ranked as a high 3.5 or a little bit higher than that, but they were just below the 4%. And it gives the administration an opportunity to take a look, what can they do to address these issues and work towards increasing the percentage on these, the job satisfaction. Some of the things that we discussed as a board there were looking at, some of them are new staff, some staff has retired, and also we have a new superintendent for NSSCO. So there's a lot of opportunities. But this was very interesting, and it's a good survey with this Human X to find out the pulse of the climate and the culture. So we did a lot with that. We also, NSSCO has also applied for ISBE, a maintenance project grant. That grant is going to be used for replacing some classroom doors and frames over at Minor School. The grant that we're getting from the ISBE is $50,000, and it's a matching grant. So the NSSCO has a funding match of about $58,000 because the 27 classroom doors and frames and the installation are going to run about $108,000. And then finally, we've done the survey of all of the systems within the school, the different buildings. Archon did a facilities assessment plan, probably very similar to what we're doing here. And they summarized it in just several pages, and I can pass this around if someone is interested in seeing it. They took a look at the building envelope, which is the walls and masonry. They looked at the roofing, they looked at the architecture, the electronics, the mechanical, and the plumbing. And they provided basically a 60-page document that identifies where this equipment is, what the age of it is, what probably some of the conditions and some of the replacement is, and they broke it down into the years that we might have to take a look at it. So the next step with that is to take a look at what's the priorities, what needs to be done first, and what can wait. So we had an excellent presentation on that, and that's part of the facilities. And we have a couple of members from from 211 that are participating in that facilities committee and giving us good input. One of the things that we did have to get at for Kirk School, there is an annual inspection of the boilers and pressure vessels. And it appeared that at Kirk School, they were found in violation, and one of the hot water tanks needs to be replaced because there was corrosion at the access port piping and piping connections. So that information was gathered, and that replacement cost is going to be at $149,400. And currently, NSSCO does have sufficient funds in the building budget to cover this, and this was something that needed to be addressed immediately to make sure that everything is safe there. So it was a lot going on at NSSCO, and thank you for letting me share some of this. All right, that will take us to EdRed. Mr. Rosenblum.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Executive Director Bridget Peach for coming and giving us a nice and brief update on what's going on legislatively. So I'm going to say ditto for my report. However, one additional, and that's special education funding. And I know that that's on an initiative of EdRed, is to continually look at that and funding in the state of Illinois and collecting information from the various school districts that are members of EdRed on their issues and how EdRed can further support them going forward. So with that, that is my EdRed report. Thank you.
Thank you. Community and Family Services report, Ms. Barrett.
Yeah, so we had two different community meetings happening in the last couple of months. One of them was the POC had their collaboration meeting with different partners in the community. A lot of their discussion was around the refugee immigration population and finding the need for across the board, all these agencies need more spaces to conduct more English classes for these populations. So they're finding that space is limited. So they're looking for additional spaces and then more partners to partner with to be giving English courses and also different like English conversations that they can have with this population. So that was that meeting. And then today, the United Palatine Coalition Partners meeting happened. District 15 did a survey with the different community partners that attend that meeting, and 50% of them said that it increases their community awareness of different resources that they have in their existing communities. It builds connections with those different agencies, and it strengthens the community resources as well, and just being able to refer different clients to different services they might not have, but other partners do. They also talked about like the networking opportunities that they have with these other agencies that strengthens the relationship building between the different agencies. Again, knowing what services these folks have. Also, the United Palatine Coalition has a community resource guide out now with a plethora of different resources in the Palatine area that community members are able to access and find different resources that they might need. And also, they are offering 4-week courses. They're all taught in Spanish, and it's for our Latinx population to close the digital inequities that are happening. So a lot of our parents aren't connected to the schools or might not know what questions or how to navigate the digital platforms that their students are using. So this is a 4-week course, and it teaches them building their confidence in the digital world. So they have an intro to Chromebook. They have, which helps them navigate Infinite Campus as well. They have email and Drive calendar help, video conference, and then navigating the internet. So it's a 4-week course, all taught in Spanish. It's an amazing opportunity for our Latinx population, and it's free of charge, and there is eligibility. So you can get connected with the United Palatine Coalition for more information about that. And then Harper College also gave a brief presentation on the emerging technology and different courses that they are offering for not only students, but different community members as well can take advantage of these different courses that they're offering in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and they're also presenting to our District 211 counselors on all of these different fields and how they can get students connected to these different fields.
Well, thank you. A lot of activity. And that was also for the Parent Connections and Community Communications Report? No, okay, that one will come next. All right, thank you. Then that'll take us to the Illinois Association of School Boards Report. Mr. Rosenblum?
Thank you. Mrs. Klimkowitz, Dr. Small, and I attended the North Cook Division dinner meeting in Rolling Meadows, and the meeting had several different items on them, including reports to the division from different committees, and that included our very own Mrs. Klimkowitz on the Resolutions Committee giving her report. They actually brought her up before dinner was served, and then they served dinner, and then everybody else went afterwards. Then we voted on the officers for the division, and Mrs. Klimkowitz was reelected as the Resolutions Chair for the North Cook Division. And the guest speaker, the former featured program was State Superintendent Tony Sanders, spoke about his vision for the future of public education, what he sees we've already been doing, what we need to do, how he sees that as a vision going forward. He brought NASA into it a little bit with some interesting slides as well. A week from tomorrow, well, a week from today, Mrs. Klimkowitz, I believe, is going to the Triple I Conference, and I will be joining her a week from tomorrow, and we will spend the weekend, as we have for several years now, networking and learning, and I will, a week from Saturday, represent this district as a delegate at the Delegate Assembly, and as always, we will bring back information that we learn and information that we gather to this entire board, so everybody can take advantage of the information that's shared during that conference.
Thank you very much. I would add one more thing to the presentation that Tony Sanders did. He talked about some of his personal experiences, and he also talked about the importance of self-care that needs to happen with administrators, especially with our superintendents and our members here that are, in the cabinet here. It's a hard job, and you have to be able to take some self-care, whether it's stopping to breathe, whether it's something. You need to have that. And he really stressed the importance of that. And I think also we as board members have to be aware of it as far as self-care for ourselves. It's an important issue. And you have to be able to do that to keep yourself functioning, to keep yourself sharp, and to be able to do the best that you can. So I think that was important. And we have to keep that in mind, especially, it's the November, it's Thanksgiving, and I think we just need to be thankful and grateful for the administrators that we have and all the opportunities that we have here in our district. So I thank you for that. Then that takes us to Parent Connection and Communications Report. Ms. Barron.
Yes, I was busy the last couple of months. Yes, on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we had our first meeting. Mr. Kurt and Ms. Erin Holmes facilitated that discussion with a small but mighty group. They discussed the purpose of the committee, which again is to talk openly with parents and community members about our communications, discuss our strengths and weaknesses, and then also providing information in a timely manner is very important. And we will be also discussing a District 211 app. So figuring out what they want to be put on the app, how do they want the functions to be, any website updates. And then they also talked about, which was really, really cool, a survival guide that parents want and are asking for all grades. So one of the things that we discuss is that we do such a great job at targeting our freshmen and senior parents, but then it's like the middle, the sophomores and the juniors that they're really like, what else? Like, what else information can we get? How can we get our students involved? So parents want a survival guide for all grades, and that's something that the committee will be discussing. They gave an overview of our strategic plan and how the group fits into that strategic plan. And then we got into like overall communications. They talked about a little bit about our emails and that the emails come from one source of communication. So it's hard to tell who exactly is sending that email. They really have to figure out, like, is it the principal? Is it a counselor? Because it just comes from District 211 communications, if I got that right. And also those who have multiple students, it's like they're trying to figure out which student does this pertain to. So improving that communication and on our emails, making it a little bit less confusing on who the communication is coming from. They talked about our website, the improvements that were made that they, were really excited for, were like transportation was easier to find this time around than previous years. AP schedules were easier to find this time around than previous years. So those are some great improvements that we have made on our website. They're still finding that it's hard to find certain information. One of the things that they brought up is like SRO information that is not readily, accessible as they reported out. And so that is something that they're taking a look at, is how to have that information more accessible, how to make it less hard to find information. Like, you don't have to be fishing through the website to figure out who our SROs are at each building, for example. And let's see here. The principal newsletters were, pretty great. They had a lot of information this time around, but I think parents really, overall, really like the information that the principals are putting in their newsletters. And that is about it. Our next steps are, the committee's next steps are app development. So again, what should go on it, and website development as well. So those are some next steps that the committee will take. And our next meeting is January something. February 7th? Okay, February 7th. So hopefully I will still be here.
All right, thank you very much. That takes us to announcements. We have the National Honor Society induction, and Mr. Rosenblum is attending Schaumburg High School, and Mr. Dombrowski is attending Hoffman Estates NHS induction. And then our next board meeting is going to be December 14th. All right, then that takes us to the next item, and that is closed session. And we would be returning. The recommended action is that the board enter closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property. Appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, matter pertaining to an individual student, and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, the recommended action is that the board return to open session. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill, aye. Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Okay, thank you. We have, the recommended action is that the Board of Education accepts the retirement request of Jorge Mota Jr. effective June 2027, according to the master contract of District 211 Operations Maintenance Group. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Bradley,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan,
Aye.
Ms. Barron,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill, aye. Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye. Motion carries. There's an item on our agenda that the board may act upon an administrative appointment. However, there will be no action regarding this item tonight. And with that, and no other business to come before the board president declares this meeting of the Board of Education adjourned. It's 10:24.